beide Paar.
Welcome to this week's edition of It is Chaile time, and on the road again, on the way to Cape Town. I'm sitting at the airport. I just love the buzz and the noise. I hope it's not too bad for you. A lot happening in Effectus Harmony. We've been very, very busy. CCMA cases all over, disciplinary hearings, consultation, restructuring. There's a lot of restructuring happening at the moment. But interesting thing in the media I see, which is quite prevalent at the moment, and I suppose it's understandable, is the whole conversation again about working from home or working from the office or adopting a bit more of a hybrid model. I also have employers asking me, listen, can you just ask staff who've been working since COVID from home to now report back to work? And obviously companies are also now asking, but listen, shouldn't we start letting staff work from home again, considering the war in Iran between America, Israel and Iran? And they've now, effectively there's a block on the Strait of Hormuz that prevents oil supply to the world, which is spiking petrol and fuel prices. As we all can feel, the petrol has been going up every single month now. So the question, is can we let staff just start working from home? Working from home, Chapter 4 of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, dealing with written particulars of employment. There are a list of elements that must be in a contract of employment, and your place of work is one of the provisions that your contract of employment must provide for. So this is actually interesting. So it is not a matter of simply, letting staff work from home. You need to consult your staff and agree with your staff. If your contract of employment states that you need to work from the office, as an example, the employer cannot just unilaterally impose you now working from home. And I know it may sound strange because typically mostly employees prefer working from home. So I suppose an employer can simply tell an employee, listen, from now you guys are working from home, and employees will just accept that. Not to say that everybody will necessarily accept that, but still, even though it is more convenient for employees generally, it's still a provisional contract provision in the contract of employment, and the employer cannot just say one day, hey guys, from now on you're working from home. But even though I suppose in practice that's probably how it happens, and then one day when it's no more convenient for the employer to let you work from home, they just want to simply say, listen, now you don't work from home anymore. But the reality of the matter is, even if there were no official agreement in place, it still becomes an implied term of your contract of employment. So the right way is to consult. There's no automatic right for an employee to either work from the office or to work from home. It really is a contractual provision that the parties need to agree on. But anyway, exciting news. We have the Harmony People Network Conference coming up on the 10th of September 2026 at the premier facility, Kiewitzkroon Wine Estate. Do yourself a favor, go on Google, hit Kiewitzkroon, and just be in awe by what is coming. We have a bit of a video that we've launched, so the registrations are now open. So if you want to register, if you are in the HR field, legal field, BE, or employment equity, skills development, health and safety, if you're a commissioner or a labor court judge, even if you're a business owner, do not miss this one. We are doing our level best to give you a world-class lineup, world-class venue, great food at a very, very affordable price. And the content, the lineup, this year it is about the AI revolution. So if you haven't smelled the coffee yet, AI is upon us. How does it impact the workplace? So watch this video and register. So, what are we talking about? The title for today is Hey Commissioner, it's not about you. Hey Commissioner, it is not about you. What I'm about to talk about today, you need to understand the proper legal setting, okay? So, my message today is for commissioners at the CCMA or at the bargaining council, or if you're an arbitrator, okay? Do understand this, that what I'm about to, I'm going to vent a bit, if I'm allowed, okay? So, but I just need to get it out of there, that what I'm saying now does not mean that the commissioner or commissioners are doing anything wrong. The LRA provides that and gives a commissioner wide discretionary powers how to deal with a dispute. So this is not about correctness or, was the commissioner wrong? But I am just surprised at how some commissioners during a conciliation process. So I had a case this week. It was in KZN, so I had a case this week in KZN. It was only a conciliation, okay? And the whole point of a conciliation is to try to see if parties can find each other to settle the dispute. I mean, this is Mzansi, we value, South Africans values Ubuntu. We value sitting around the table and talk, okay? And see if we can't settle the dispute. So conciliation, for those of you who may not necessarily know, broadly speaking, when it comes to, let's say, a dismissal dispute, there are two processes, conciliation and arbitration. Arbitration is almost like a court case. Now, the CCMA is not a court of law, but it's, in simple terms, it's like a court case. Okay, there's like a judge, which is the commissioner, and both parties will fight it out. They will lead their arguments and their evidence. When it comes to a typical dismissal dispute, the onus is on the employer to prove that the dismissal was fair, procedurally, and substantively. And they do so by arguments and evidence, and obviously the defense will do the same. And at the end of the day, the judge or the commissioner will make a decision, a ruling in terms of who's winning the case and what the consequences thereof may be. But conciliation is arbitration is with prejudice, and this is important. It means that that arbitration award becomes public knowledge, and it's on your record for the rest of your life, okay? And it can really have an impact on your future employability, even depending on the case. Sometimes there are criminal elements to a case. Maybe you stole something. If your employer dismissed you for theft, for instance, and you decide to go through arbitration, you must be careful, because that arbitration award, even if you win a case, it depends on what's in that award. Even if you win a case, it can be used against you in a criminal court, you see. So an arbitration award is public record, and people can at the end of the day count against you. But anyway, conciliation is without prejudice. You can't record the proceedings, you can't reference back what was stated in conciliation. For instance, if you go through arbitration, you can't say, but in conciliation you said this. Conciliation is without prejudice, can't be held against you, can't record it. It really is a process of two parties talking and to see if they can't find a middle ground. In other words, can you settle? They say typically a good settlement is when both parties are hurting. With other words, the employer must pay something they don't want to pay, and the employee don't necessarily get everything they're asking for either. But be that as it's may, the commissioner's purpose really is just to facilitate this process. But why I'm saying, hey commissioner, it's not about you. In my experience in this case, now mostly it doesn't happen this way, but in this case, the commissioner really tried to impose himself on this process. So let me just tell you what this case was about. This employee was dismissed for poor performance. So he filed an unfair dismissal dispute, and it was him and his representative, a union official. Okay, so there they sit. I've asked, obviously the commissioner asked, so what, why are you here? Why do you believe the dismissal was unfair? You know what the union's response was? They feel the dismissal was unfair purely because the employer didn't consult properly with the union. But what I mean with that is at the day of the consultation with the union, the employee wasn't present. That's it. Now I'm sitting there. What about the merits of the case? No, their view is the employee should have been present when the employer consult the union because, the employer happened to be a shop steward. So you need to obviously consult the union if you're going to potentially dismiss one of their shop stewards. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, so they don't really have anything to say. But what he wants is he wants his job back. So that's what they want, okay? Now, here's the facts of the case. The employee's been there for 7-8 years. He was trained properly. There are 25 KPIs where he consistently did not perform. Okay? They called him to a performance review process. He miserably failed that. He agreed he's not performing. Okay? They agreed then to move him to another department where, there are not such tedious and strenuous KPIs. While he is subjected to a retraining program, there's a training manager appointed to help him, plus a team leader to help him so that he can also in the new department start practicing what he's been taught. They've took him through a 6 months performance enhancement program. There was mentorship, coaching, warnings. Eventually, they did another performance review of him, and after 6 months, he agreed that he's not able to perform, and then he asked to be moved to another division. Unfortunately, there was no vacancy available. So they eventually, subjected him to an inquiry so he can make representations. Made representations. There was nothing of substantive value really from a defense perspective for him. 25 KPIs, he's not performing. So ultimately, the employer dismissed him. Okay. Employer was kind. He was dismissed early in a month, and they still paid him the full month. Okay, which was great. Now he's sitting there in arbitration. But now, here's my technique. Not arbitration, conciliation. But now here's my technique. I like talking to the other party, and I try to influence him, because at the end of the day, litigation, there are consequences for both parties. First of all, it's my professional opinion, okay? He's not going to win the arbitration. Now he's sitting there, that arbitration award can potentially ruin his reputation and his career. I mean, really think about this now. This is not a dismissal dispute where somebody was dismissed for late coming, okay? Where a potential future employer can still forgive you or whatever the case may be. This is a case of incompetence. Do you honestly want an arbitration award where you are probably going to lose and the commissioner confirmed that you're incompetent? I mean, seriously, who's going to employ you ever? So what I normally do is I try to really listen to what they want, okay? So I can be 100% clear as to what their interests are. So that's important. Listening to what their needs are, their interests is really important. And I discuss that with them. I discuss their interests with them. But then I try to create leverage, okay? So I then explain to them, because here this is important. Most employees, when they go through arbitration, their representatives wants to make money from them, okay? So they don't tell them the full truth. They don't tell them arbitration, no, is with prejudice. They don't tell them that, okay? They don't tell them, sunshine, if you go, the fact that you have rights doesn't mean you must always exercise those rights, because it can count against you. But they don't consult like that, especially if it's a lawyer, because a lawyer wants to make money, you see. They're not going to tell you that, okay? So then I try to create leverage by telling them, listen, here's the procedural factors why your dismissal was procedurally fair in terms of the law, and here's the substance. Surely you can understand, okay, that you don't have an easy case to fight here. Let's just wait for a minute. Now we're welcoming at the UR International Airport.
Do not leave your luggage and personal belongings unattended.
So I try to explain, but listen, you are facing an uphill battle here, okay? The case from the employer seems to be solid. Now, I'm not saying there's a guarantee. No case is guaranteed, okay? A case is not always so simple and straightforward, but at the end of the day, in conciliation, we have all the merits on our side. Then I tell the employer, but listen, arbitration is with prejudice, and you must really think here, okay? I do have something to offer to settle. Number one, a neutral reference letter. Now, I'm going to get back to that in a moment, okay? And then, okay, I had about a month's salary in compensation as a settlement amount, a month, okay? This is typically, I believe, in the circumstances, in the context of the case, a reasonable settlement. But this commissioner, no, who are you to offer a neutral reference letter? What is the value of a neutral reference letter? Did you not hear what he said? He said he's got a house to pay and a car to pay. So I had to explain to the commissioner, I understand that there is something called a certificate of service, but at the end of the day, as part of the settlement process, we try to keep his record, his disciplinary record clean, okay? The employer can settle and agree that if they receive a phone call from a potential employer, okay, that they can have a discussion with a new employer, look at some of his core strengths or so, without actually mentioning he's been dismissed for incompetence. There's a way that you can actually consult a new employer on that, without trying to tarnish his reputation. And that is what we agreed to. And that commissioner is just like, no, he wants a house and he wants a car. I'm not going to give him a house, nor am I going to give him a car. Okay? And eventually I asked the commissioner, are you saying he's not allowed to accept a month's salary in compensation? Are you saying he's not allowed to do that? At the end of the day, conciliation is about the parties finding each other. He's represented, okay? So that representative can say yes or no. But the commissioner didn't even give them a chance, okay? They didn't even have a chance to think about it, okay? The commissioner was just bulldozing himself into this process. No, it's unacceptable. He's going to issue a certificate of non-resolution. So I'm like, commissioner, seriously? They can't make up their own mind. They can't decide for themselves whether this is acceptable or not. Hey? Yeah, man, yes, sir. I'm sitting there, I'm thinking myself, there's always the stories going around that some commissioners are pro-employee and other commissioners are pro-employer. I don't know what this commissioner's problem was. Maybe he had a bad day or something. I just don't know. Maybe he read something in the media and it got to his head or something. I've got no idea, Obviously, I'm a bit skilled in how I present my discussions, so maybe, but the guy was represented also, So I don't know what it was. Why will a commissioner impose himself like that? And you know what is scary, is that now that employee walked away confident he's got a case, he's going to win arbitration, you see. Maybe he'll win arbitration, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, this company's bundle of documents, it's over 120 pages of how they've tried to assist. This is a good company, okay? This is a good lenient employer of how they tried to assist this employee to improve. A 6 months process, and he agreed he's not performing. You know, I mean, what is the impression of an employee now? Now he's going to come back for arbitration. Okay, it's his right. Okay, it's his right to do so, but probably he will lose the case, and then what? Then he's got an arbitration award that confirms he is incompetent. And also know this: the commissioner at arbitration is not the commissioner at conciliation. Most commissioners will allow parties to talk. The commissioners don't talk much. They will let the parties talk, and then he will interject at the end, trying to make sense of it and trying to, inform both parties of the consequences should they go for arbitration. And settlement's always a good thing. This commissioner didn't care about settlement. He wants us to pay for his house and for his car. That's the impression I got. I'm like, sunshine, commissioner, I think you must go have a cup of coffee. That's not going to happen. But again, as I said, a commissioner's got wide discretionary powers how to deal with the case. So what the commissioner did is not wrong. We need to get that out there. And I'm not against commissioners. I'm merely, this is Chaile time. We tell all the do's and the don'ts. I was just surprised to see, and you sometimes get those, when you litigate at the CCMA as a representative for your client, whether it's employer and employee, for us, and this is going to be a bit ironic because I say that, hey, this is not about you, Commissioner. For us, it is about the Commissioner, okay? Because we need to influence the Commissioner, and we need to adapt very quickly to that Commissioner's style. I remember when I studied labor law at university, the professor one day told us that the commissioner at the CCMA is like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get. Some is round, some is flat, some is like a triangle, some is a square. They're all different, So when you walk into that room, you try to gauge the mood of this commissioner, his personality, and sometimes you get that wild commissioner. He's not taking anybody's nonsense, Yeah, some of them are like that. Some of them are very, very strict. I remember one day, about a year ago, I did an arbitration for an unfair labor practice benefit dispute. The company decided that some employees in December is not getting a bonus, so the union filed a dispute, unfair labor practice benefit dispute in terms of Section 186 subsection 2 of the LRA to the CCMA. And when we eventually got to arbitration, oh my goodness, yes, this commissioner, when he heard what the case was about, then he said, yeah, I remember when he worked for corporate, just before he finished off at corporate, he was also supposed to get a bonus 1 December, and the employer decided not to give him a bonus. He wasn't happy about that. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I just lost my case. We won the case. So, a commissioner at the CCMA is a powerful person. He can make or break a case, eh? I think this commissioner now on the case I had this week in KZN, he's a bit old, a bit grumpy. I don't know, I think he had enough. Maybe he must move on. I've got no idea. This is my opinion. But at the end of the day, Commissioner, you didn't do anything wrong. I'm not upset. I'm just saying, when it comes to conciliation, allow people to talk. And allow people to make up their own minds. And don't enforce your own views on them, okay? Okay, so that's this week for It Is Chaile Time. Please do register for the Harmony People Network Conference in Kiewitzkroon, Pretoria. It's going to be absolutely amazing. And stay a little bit longer. We are looking at job review right now. Okay, see you soon. Bye.
Good morning, Harmony People. Let's have a look at some of the vacancies posted nationwide on our Harmony People's Network this week. First up, a well-known international manufacturing company based in Belleville, Cape Town is looking for a dynamic and professional Chinese-speaking HR officer to join their team. Mysol Holdings and Logistics has an opening for a surveyor position based at their open cast mine. Ridial is seeking an experienced HR generalist in Johannesburg, and last but not least, Discovery Primary School is hiring a school-based occupational therapist. For the full information of the mentioned positions, how to apply, as well as more available positions, find the vacancy link in the description. You will also find a link to a useful video on how to compose a winning CV and have a successful interview. Tune in again next week for more Harmony vacancies.